Hello, basketball fans, and welcome to the Dave and Dia podcast. Starting at center from Portland, the wily veteran Dave Deckard. And at guard from Los Angeles, the patron saint of rainbows and unicorns, your podcast MVP, Dia Miller.
Well, hello, Trailblazers fans. What a night. What an amazing night or day wherever you are, I suppose, because you're listening to this podcast. But Dia and I are in a time warp where you're concerned. When do we record these, boys and girls? We record them on Tuesday night. And what happened on Tuesday night? Only one of the most epic playoff games, and in the classic Greek sense as well, not just epic big, but epic self-made tragedy. Do you know this, Dia? The definition of Greek tragedy, Greek epic tragedy, is the hero who is amazing and has all these superhuman powers. There just ends up being one flaw that trips them up at the end, and it ends up being a sad story. That's exactly what happened to the Blazers. One of the hugest, most amazing playoff performances ever by Damian Lillard. 55 points, 12 made three-pointers, shot 17 of 24 from the floor, which is like impossible with the opposing defense keyed on him. Did all of this to bring Portland back from a 20-point deficit, and then in the second overtime, they just can't keep it together, and they go down 147 to 140. After all that setup, how are you feeling, Dia, mere minutes after this game concluded?
I need a nap. I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. This should be. When can we change the rule to if the game ends and it's that intense, it's just a tie, and we're just gonna call it a tie, and that is all. Because we got to the end of that second overtime, and I actually said out loud, "I can't take a third one. I can't do it. I can't handle it. I'm exhausted, Dave. I'm exhausted. I'm bummed that it's not going to be Blazers in 6 like I predicted. But also, that was some really good basketball. It was really exciting. I had to actually physically turn off the game for a few minutes on more than one occasion with every intention of turning it back on. But I just needed to actually breathe because I wasn't. I was just sitting there holding my breath. That was an experience. That was an experience of a game.
Yeah, we're all in shock, I think. Look, there are 4 places we need to go with this. Why don't you choose what order we go in? We can do Dame, everybody else, the flow of the game, and the significance for the rest of the series. What do you want to start with?
I think let's start with the flow of the game. I think let's start there because it's going to naturally go to the rest.
So we'll skip over the things that are germane to the other parts, but basically the Blazers start out with a 0-10 deficit. I think they did come prepared. Their defense wasn't horrible. Denver was hitting some tough shots, but their scoring, their offense just was absent. And so they dug themselves a hole, and then it got worse. They got down by 20. And you could see Denver it was almost a rope-a-dope strategy. Denver said, yeah, we got this. And then they started acting like, Game 4 Denver, where they kind of took the night off. And all of a sudden, by halftime, Portland was within 3. And by the third quarter, Portland was ahead, which was just fantastic. And by the way, Damian Lillard started that early. He was a real key to that end of the first half run. And then it got to the fourth quarter. It was just back and forth slugfest. Yusuf Nurkic fouled out. We'll talk about that in a minute. Jokic had kind of free reign, and he continued to score. And it looked like the Nuggets were going to go away with it. They were up 5, up 7. But then the Blazers came back and tied it. And then the Blazers went up 5. And then the Nuggets came back and tied it. And the Nuggets went up 5. It ended up that Lillard bailed them out. And, someone else did too. I think it was McCollum or somebody. I can't remember in all the dizziness. But there were a couple other points scored. Norman Powell, I know, scored in there too. And the Blazers ended up tying it. And Lillard hit that tying shot, I believe. And then it went into overtime. And Damian Lillard and Enes Kanter were the heroes. Between behind them, they scored 19 points. All 19 points were scored by two players in overtime. Cantor scored
and really
two.
one. And really one
Cantor
player,
scored
let's be honest.
Cantor scored 2, and Lillard scored 17. In fact, 17 in a row. So he carried them through one overtime. They again got in a deficit, came back. Lillard shot the lights out, brought him back. Second overtime, they got down. He carried them back, shot the lights out. But the final play did not end up going to Dame. And as was true most of the night, the Blazers not only didn't make a shot, they didn't even get one off because Lillard's teammates couldn't deliver. And so this topsy-turvy, up and down, heavyweight, Frazier versus Ali kind of deal here ended up with Portland losing at the end, 147-140. You could not ask for anything more at the end or from Lillard. You could ask for a lot more at the beginning and from all his teammates. Somehow it ended up somewhere in the middle, and unfortunately Denver's middle was a little better than Portland's. How'd I do?
I'm still just tired.
Yeah, just hearing about it makes
you
tired.
covered it. You covered it. I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to watch a regulation game with flips and flops, and one team's up and the other team's up, and now they're tied, and then the other team's up again. And that is exhausting when you're invested in the game. But to have all of that happen and then have Dame hit a game tire, I guess, not a game winner, a game tire, and then go into overtime and go through all the emotion again and then hit another tire. And here we are now in 2 overtimes. My brain feels a little mushy. Damian Lillard really just turned it on tonight at the second half. The first half was, you know, the rest of the team was kind of pulling some weight in the first half. But that second half, Damian Lillard really just turned it on. And it was like, Dame, it seems to get in these moods where he's like, yeah, we're going to win. And then he just goes off and decides he's going to do it himself. And so, you know, he did that, and he almost pulled it off.
So here's your Dame stat line. 52 minutes, which is a lot. I mean, the max is 58, so he played most of the game. 17 of 24 shooting, which is just incredible. He missed 7 shots out of 24. So, you know, 75% shooting will do you pretty good. And then also 12 of 17 three-pointers. 12 three-pointers made is an NBA record, but 12 missing 5 three-pointers out of 17 taken, also pretty good. 9 of 10 free throws, that's kind of Dame-ish, but still good. 6 rebounds, 10 assists, a steal, 3 blocked shots, only 1 turnover, and no personal fouls. I mean, you could not ask for a better stat line. I mean, that's like Shaq, except Shaq with 3-pointers. I mean, it's just, and passing. Yeah. It's just a dominant playoffs performance. He couldn't be stopped. And no matter what Denver did, whether he was coming off a screen, whether he was stepping back, whether he was driving the ball, by the way, he hit. And the tighter the game got and the more important the shots got, the more he made them. So It was like the opposite of what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to tighten up and fatigue. He actually got stronger as the game went on, defying all expectations. It was just nobody has ever seen anything like that in the playoffs in a Portland uniform. We've barely seen that ever happen in the NBA, period. He just cemented his name as among the stars, not just in Portland, but that was one of the historic games of NBA history.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned it briefly, but I want to again point out the fact that he is the first in the history of the NBA to score 12 three-pointers in a playoff game. The first player in the history of the NBA to do that. I mean, he set a record tonight, and that's a pretty cool record. On top of that, he also tied for 7th place all-time points in playoff games. The record for that currently is 63, and it's held by Michael Jordan. So seventh place all-time points in a playoff game. That's not something to, brush off. That's a big deal. And he played so well. He, at least at the end, he was shooting like crazy. I feel like I can't even get a sentence out. It's interesting because, normally you have a game like this and you kind of have time to process it and come down from it. And we are not doing that. We are just jumping literally right into this. And so I feel like my brain is trying to process it while we're talking about it, and it's just coming out as mush.
Yeah, so basically you're all of Lillard's teammates tonight, right? I mean,
Dave.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about turning points in this game. I mean, obviously the 20-point deficit was won, and that was not great, but the turning point really was making that up, storming back. And by the way, Norman Powell had a lot to do with that. He did very well. Yusuf Nurkic had something to do with that as well. CJ McCollum,
and then he fouled out.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the next big
problem.
Yeah, they got in the dogfight, right, in the third quarter, and they survived Nurkic being out in the fourth. Okay, they did okay, basically. It wasn't pretty, wasn't Carmelo Anthony's greatest game, frankly, but they survived that second unit stretch in the fourth. But then Nurkic comes in, and just not even, I mean, this is like the 8-minute mark. He had 4 fouls, and there were 8 minutes left. There's most of the quarter left. He draws what might be a sketchy foul on an offensive screen, which is, I think, forgivable because screens are being set all the time and most of them are moving. I don't know about that one, but it's called. Okay, then you've got your 5th. Nothing you can do about that. But did you notice how he got his 6th? It was Aaron Gordon. I don't know if you know Aaron Gordon. Have you heard of Aaron Gordon? You know what Aaron Gordon does?
I mean, there was a little talk of bringing him to the Blazers, and I'm pretty sure I was on board with that, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you know what he's famous for? Besides defending? Now, he's a little older and a little more injured, so it's not quite the same. But he was one of the superlative all-time NBA slam dunk champ. And, you know, he's not getting up above the backboard square anymore. But Nurkic goes with 5 fouls to block an Aaron Gordon dunk. And look, I got to admire his tenacity. I've got to admire his heart. I've got to admire his never say die attitude. But he should have said die at that point. He should have kept his hands in his pockets, put him behind his back. The Blazers can't afford to lose him. He knows they can't afford to lose him. It's Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon's man let him by. Fair enough. I don't think you rotate over and jump up. If you're Nurkic, which is, I mean, it's kind of like you're going after a F-15 in the military and you're like a 737. And, you know, Nurkic has lost some weight. He's not a 747 anymore. But you know what? No matter how you press that throttle up, you're not going to get the lift. It's not going to happen. And Nurkic was about 3 or 4 inches short of actually touching the ball. What he did get was a little bit of face, a little bit of body, and a lot of forearm. And what ended up happening is the ref had to call his 6th and disqualification foul. And I kind of misspoke. I think this was at the 4-minute mark, actually. It was 4:11 when he drew the offensive foul and 4 minutes exactly when he fouled out. So it wasn't 8. Anyway, there was still a ton of time left. That was too much. He had to stay in the game and he didn't. So that was, to me, a big failure. I mean, do you have any other take on that, I suppose? It's such a tricky thing because fouls are part of the game and it's tricky to know. Sometimes you get away with them, sometimes you don't. I think as someone who played basketball, I played at low level. It's not like I was, a professional. I played through high school and then I played like intramural college basketball. So it's not like I was, some major athlete. But I think when you've played a game, you see the game a little differently, maybe. And I always think like they're making these split-second decisions. And I mean, a lot of the time, it's not like he went up there thinking, sometimes they foul on purpose. But I think a lot of times they think like, I can get the ball. I don't know. Maybe that's naive. I don't know, Dave. I'm sure Nurk thought he could get the ball. Otherwise, he wouldn't have jumped. I don't think he went up to intentionally foul him. But let's sit down on the whiteboard here.
No, it wasn't a good call. Yeah. But there were a lot of those tonight. There were a lot of not good calls tonight.
Well, so Dia, I agree with you that fouls are part of the game. But to me, like your first 4 fouls are part of the game. Your 5th foul, you don't pick that up, but that wasn't his fault. I mean, again, he was just setting a screen. I think he did fine. I don't think that screen was more illegal than any other screen. His 5th foul, there's no blame to Nurkic in that one. But that 6th foul, I mean, again, you're an NBA player. You know how this works. And you know who you are. And it's not like you can be totally passive on defense, but you also know if you're Nurkic that your teammates have a habit of letting people go to the rim. And at that point in the game, if that happens, I think you have to chalk that up as 2 points instead of 2 points, and then you're also out of the game.
Yeah, foul him. He's not only are you out, but then he still gets the free throws. So you're still getting It is a bad call. I mean, ultimately, is a bad call when you're living on that last foul. You got to be cautious. You got to be overly cautious. You got to be careful. And it obviously wasn't a good move. Yeah. Having him out hurt us. Even if we looked like we held it together, we ended the quarter tied. We didn't win. Had we had Nurk, maybe that would have been different. So, I mean, you can say that about a million things. And I always struggle with that because literally, like, I think it's easy to blame the people that made mistakes near the end of the game and say, well, they lost the game for us. And yeah, technically those are the things that ended up, we lost. But if anything had changed throughout the game at any point, it could have put us in a different position. So you can't just look at the last few things that happened and blame those things. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that really we should have done differently. There's a lot of things that didn't go well, that didn't go. Really, the fact that we were able to pull it together and tie twice and go into double overtime is pretty impressive, honestly, with the way that this game started out. But that's the Blazers gonna blazer. I mean, that's what we do. We that's what we do. So, this was a very blazery kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, it's an apt point that everything after that 4-minute mark, including the 2 overtimes, was a compromise then at that point. Because you're choosing, okay, do I put Enes Kanter in? Do I put Carmelo Anthony in? And Terry Stotts did both. But neither one is the right answer, and you know this, especially on the night where Carmelo is shooting 3 of 11.
I feel like I don't even remember him playing.
Well, I do, but unfortunately, mostly for his mistakes, and everybody had some. But the defense visibly suffered from that point on. There was no right answer. They had little spurts where it worked, but it was always walking a tightrope, and sometimes they fell over that tightrope. Particularly then when it got to like the second overtime and Jokic just started going, they just started isoing Jokic, and there was not a lot of answer for that. But before we even get there, I mean, so we have Nurkic. That was the cascade, this initial domino, right? You have Carmelo Anthony not making rotations. Late in the game, and I think it was the second overtime, he had a chance to get it to Norm Powell, who was wide open for a corner 3. And instead, he did the Carmelo thing of he probed his own shot first. It wasn't there, of course. And again, he was shooting 3 of 11, 2 of 9 from distance. So this wasn't his night. And then he got the ball to Powell. Powell did get off a clean shot, but it was late, and you messed with Norm's rhythm. And if that had been an instant pass, that would have been different. There were several defensive rotations that could have been different. And the Blazers ended up with Anthony guarding Jokic for decent stretches of that second overtime, which again worked sometimes and didn't work sometimes, but that's not what you want, right?
I was just going to say, one of the things that was so frustrating to me watching this game, and this is going to sound maybe ridiculous because it's the Blazers, but I don't know how many times I wanted to scream at them, like, you're missing your threes. Try it too. It's worth 1 less point, but it's a little easier to make. I know that the Trailblazers, this particular team, lives and dies by the 3. I know that that's a huge part of our game. I know that you constantly watch them do these step back threes where they're purposely stepping out to take a 3-point shot. They do that all the time. You see them run away from the hoop to come out and make 3-pointers. Like this is what they do. They do this. And I mean, I know that league wide, that's a much more common thing as well now too. But when you're not sinking your shots, when you're doing that over and over and over, and you're missing over and over and over, it's okay to shoot a layup. It's okay to go for a much more sure thing. It's okay to drive to the hoop. And there were so many times where I was watching this today. I don't normally get frustrated by this. Normally I can watch them do it and I can think, okay, well, it's fine, whatever. But for whatever reason today, I don't know if they were just missing more. I don't know if I was just frustrated. I don't know what it was, but I was watching them do this over and over and over. And I just wanted to scream at the TV, take a layup. Take a layup. That's not how you say it.
It's exactly it. Take a layup. Take the shot. Yeah.
Go. Take the 1 less point and something that's a much more sure thing, or at least you're probably going to get fouled. I mean, it was like I'm watching this happen, and I'm just thinking, it's a great attempt, but we don't need attempts. We need points. Make it. Do what you have to do. That drove me nuts. That just absolutely drove me nuts.
Well, and part of that can again go back to the Nurkic thing late, which is where we remember a lot of shots from, is because the screening wasn't as good. And it wasn't as easy for people to get free. And Nurkic sets excellent screens, and he just wasn't there to do it. One guy who did hit his threes, well, there were two, besides Lillard, Anthony Simons, who we'll just skip over. He shot 2 for 5 from three-point land, 2 for 7 overall, but his was kind of no harm, no foul. Those 2 threes were pretty nice for Portland, so fine. But Robert Covington, 3 for 6, hit his open threes, took his threes aggressively and appropriately, shot 5 for 10 from the field. Great, and good on defense, too. I mean, did well. A couple of steals, a lot of rebounds. He was really good, except, oh my gosh, twice in the overtimes. Had a dunk. One was a putback and one was off a pass, I believe. Had a dunk twice and over-dunked it both times and missed. Just put it off the back of the rim twice in critical. I mean, this wasn't like, we're up by 20 in the third, let's have fun. It was literally, this is the 2 points that can save the game for us, and missed 2 dunks and just was going to throw them down with mustard, it looked like. Now, granted, when someone puts it up soft, we say, come on, dunk that. But I think that there's somewhere in the middle of the bell curve, and he was way off the other side at that point. And the fact that it happened once, okay, you can ride with that. But the second one that you do that, like that, you have to go to the shame box at that point.
Yeah, that was tough to watch. I've never dunked in my life, so I have a hard time speaking to how this works. But is it a safer bet to just, roll it off into the hoop real quick, like right there? I don't know, but it was rough. It was rough 2 in a row.
You do see people pull up there. I mean, we don't want them to lay it up, because for the modern NBA player, that's like calculus, right? You don't want any English involved. You don't want none of that. You don't want any layups in that situation. But you do see players pull off on the power a little bit on their dunks, right? When it's going in and they're just gonna, and you don't want to pull off too much, but a normal dunk like you've done 1,000 times would have been okay. Instead of let's shame the world and, make like Thanos and destroy the universe. Didn't quite happen.
I mean, sometimes I just think that must be pure adrenaline too.
Yeah.
It might not even be that he was trying to do that. It might just be that that's how it came out. I don't know. I cannot speak to dunks because I'm 5'2" and can't even reach the net.
We'll get you one of those mini trampolines and we'll see what you can do. But, I mean, and again, look, I don't think we should blame Covington. I think he was a huge net positive, I think. I'm just thinking, what are these players going to be thinking of when they go to sleep tonight? That's probably his. Norm, I think, did fine. He missed a lot of shots, actually. He missed all 3 of his threes, and he was only 5 for 14 overall. But he did give the Blazers a pretty big boost. Especially in the earlier, when they needed a pick-me-up in the first half, he got it for them, so that's good. But the one guy who's left, CJ, and what's going to be remembered is that Damian Lillard scored 17 points straight in overtime and had single-handedly brought them into overtime and through the first overtime and in position to tie it in the second overtime. This was Lillard's universe-spanning, career, NBA-breaking playoff performance, and the person who got the critical shot was not Dame, but CJ. And, I mean, it wasn't his fault. He was open. He was just receiving the pass, but a pass got tipped. He corralled it, but felt he needed to create space to get the three-pointer, and instead of getting a shot up, he stepped back to create space, get balance, and his foot was out of bounds. And not a tiny bit out of bounds, but it was way out of bounds. And that was impossible to miss. And so the Blazers didn't miss the three-pointer to tie it. They never even got one off.
Yeah, that was tragic. The first thing I thought when he did that was, oh boy, Twitter's going to be a mess tonight. There are people who have been calling for CJ's head for a while, and this is just fuel to the fire. The fact of the matter is that it was a critical mistake at a critical time. That doesn't mean that CJ lost the game. Like I said, there are so many different things that could have changed it at so many different points. seemed like there were a lot of errors on our part there at the end. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate situation. It's one of those things that you look at it. He is going to hate that for the longest time because it was such a small error, like it shouldn't have happened. And I think those are the kinds of things that you just kick yourself for over and over and over. Like, oh my gosh, why? Like that was such a needless mistake. But people make mistakes, and in these games, things like that happen sometimes. So, it is what it is. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are clamoring about, but at the same time, it was at a critical point.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not, I do not hold that against CJ one bit. That doesn't affect my opinion. That play does not affect my opinion of CJ at all. He had a bigger defender on him. That defender had tipped the ball. CJ was not catching it clean. And he had to manufacture something and do it quickly. And the guy could have easily blocked his shot. Upon further reflection, knowing he was on the sideline, should he have juked sideways instead of backwards? Yes, but there's no way. That's an impossible ask to process all of that in that situation. That play, erase it all. CJ's issue, and the issue of CJ with this team and in this series too, is not an issue of inches. It's an issue of miles. There are miles of defensive ground that has not been covered. 7 for 22 shooting is not fantastic. Now, he had 7 rebounds, 7 assists, so this is not a terrible game for him, all right? But 7 for 22, I mean, you watch his shots, and this was not exactly a clutch performance. His shots were not that bothered. They were makeable shots, and it's just there was something a little bit off. 2 for 8 from the three-point arc. Again, these were makeable shots, and he was not there. And he's kind of not been there all series. And I get the 21-point average and stuff like that. That's pretty good. A lot of people would take that. That said, that's what CJ's going to do. If Blazers going to Blazers, CJ's going to CJ. And CJ scores 20 points. But there's been a lot of other stuff that's not been there. And the mix has not worked in this series. And Denver's been able to put pressure on that shooting guard position. And I'm sorry, that position is caved in for the Blazers. And that, in addition to the years of evidence that there might be alternatives, or that even at the best, this doesn't work for long, that should be the epitaph here. Not anything about CJ being a terrible player, but rather that it's just not an optimum use for that position. And I think that games like this kind of underline it. And I hate to say it, they kind of do.
I mean, I will go on record over and over and over again that I don't want to trade TJ and I think we should keep him. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it at this point. The one thing I will say is when Dame goes off like he does and he scores over and over and over and over, it's great and we needed it, but it also kind of breaks the rhythm. And so it's tough when when you don't touch the ball for several possessions and someone else is just going off and playing, which he did. I'm not criticizing Dame because we needed him to do that. But I am saying that I don't think it's abnormal when you have one person going off like that for everybody else to struggle when they finally get their hands on the ball. And I think that we saw some of that tonight. Dame just went off. And then when other people get a chance, Dame should have had a lot more assists than he did. Because he was making plays, he was creating plays for his teammates, and they were missing. And I think sometimes when he goes off like that, then you end up with guys that get cold and they don't shoot as well as they maybe would if the rhythm was still there. And this is a good argument for not playing so much ISO ball, but that just happened to be where we were at tonight. So I'm not critical of Dame. I just think that it's important to touch on the fact that that's not unheard of, that that they kind of get cold when they're not doing it.
It's true. In this case, though, I think they got their shots. I mean, there's a reason that Dame took over, and it's because everybody else, and Dame wasn't real aggressive, and he certainly wasn't hogging the ball early on, and they dug a 20-point hole. And then every time he stopped shooting it, and someone else did, as the game progressed, the Blazers got in a hole again. So at some point, they all looked at Dame and said, you better bail us out. I mean, they didn't say that consciously, but their numbers and their plays said it. And he did. So there's a little bit of an inversion on that phenomenon. But you're correct in that I think it's awful hard to go back to CJ at that point, which is why I think the entire universe was startled that he ended up with it. I mean, and again, that's not CJ's fault, and he should be able to hit that shot, and it's not a bad play to go to him. But that was Dame's shot. Everybody knew it was Dame's shot. Dame didn't take the shot and didn't get the shot. And again, he'd gotten it 24 times before. He'd rattle off 17 points in a row in overtimes. You can't ask more. But it's awful hard to watch that last deciding shot to continue the game, not go to Dame after all of that.
Yeah, I mean, there were just so many things that if they'd gone a little bit differently, this would have been a different outcome. You know, it's been a series. We didn't even talk about Game 3 and Game 4, which
let's get to that. Let's skip to that, but let's do one more thing. Actually, two more things with this. First of all,
okay,
even had CJ's shots gone in and the Blazers gone to a third overtime, let's be a little bit realistic. Now, granted, there were some intentional fouls that monkeyed with this, but Nurkic had 6 fouls and was disqualified. At the end of the game, as it was, Covington also had 6 fouls, and CJ also had 6 fouls. Norman Powell had 4, Carmelo Anthony had 4, Enes Kanter had 4 in 14 minutes. So, look, this was a third overtime was going to be a really tough ask anyway, because there was a decent chance that you're going to start dipping into Harry Giles. Well, Nasir Little and Derek Jones Jr. would have been next, I think, out there. But at some point, you're not going to win that game. I think Denver had the inside track anyway. So a little bit of modesty on the lamenting, I suppose, this middle ground. Yeah, it's sad that it happened the way it did. At the same time, it may not have been a difference maker had they had to go to 3. The other thing is, I think that you brought up, which is interesting. Let's look at who got better and who got worse. Dame was superlative. I think Covington was mostly for the better. Powell was kind of neutral, tending toward good. Nurkic was good when he stayed in there. His big mistake was not getting in there, but he was fantastic. McCollum trended much worse in this game. I think Carmelo Anthony, all his weaknesses were exposed. That was bad. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Anthony Simons were pretty neutral. Enes Kanter, I think, was not great, if nothing else because of those fouls. So you had about maybe 60% of Lillard's teammates flourished or did really well during his epic game, and then a couple of key ones did not. And I think that kind of sums up the Blazers. Like, you hit on most of the cylinders and it's good, but you're not quite hitting on all. And that's what happened. And Lillard bailed them out on that kind of night, but they needed one more cylinder to fire, and it just kind of didn't. How do you feel? I mean, I know exhausted and whatever, but let's take a look. How do you feel heading into Game 6 after this? Coming back to Portland, we know what happened. We know that the big minute players played 50 plus actually tonight. You got 2 days rest, but you're coming back home. How do you, Dia, feel about Game 6?
You know, how do you think I feel, Dave? I mean, I'm positive about it. I think it'll be a good game. I think the Blazers will come back and win it because that's what the Blazers do. I, initially said Blazers in 6. I'm adjusting that. I still think the Blazers will win. I think it will be in 7, obviously, because we can't win in 6 at this point. This isn't our first rodeo in the playoffs with Denver, and we have a good track record as far as that's concerned. So I think we'll do well. I think we'll do really well. It's situations like this where this team does well. We're going back home. That's an advantage. The fans are there. I think that'll help. I've said that before. I still think that rings true. You can't break me. I can't get past just feeling like we're going to win. We're going to do it. We're going to advance. We're going to go to the next round. And that will forever be my outlook until it isn't, until we lose, until it's not an opportunity. It's not an option anymore. Until we are out, I'm going to think we're going to win. So I think we're going to win. I don't think that this is a mismatch. I don't think that this is an unwinnable situation. I think we'll win.
I think I agree with you, actually.
Yay! Cue the rainbows.
That's right. Yeah, you can see them sprouting out of my ears. I mean, part of it is Game 3 and Game 4, because every team that's been ahead in this series so far has relaxed. And there was a little inexcusable for Portland and also equally inexcusable for Denver when they lost theirs. So there was a reason this is 2-2. And after Portland took the lead, it's basically every other team had, the team with the advantage has lost it. That said, I think there is a possibility, I would put it about 20 or 25%, that the Blazers just look at this game, said, we gave our all, can't get anything better from Dame, we're done. I don't mean they mentally decide that, but that they get pushed. You know how that happens, like sometimes when Portland gets under stress and they're kind of shaky and you push them and they fall all the way over. I'd say there's about a 25% of chance of that happening and Denver just blowing them the heck out of the building. And that would be sad, but I can see that happening. But I think that's a relatively small chance. I think there's another 10% or so chance of Portland fiddling around with a close game and Jokic comes through or something weird happens and the Blazers lose it, right? So that altogether, that's about 35%. And I think there's a reasonable chance they lose it, but it's not an overwhelming chance. I would say the other 65 is that they win this game. I don't think they're going to win it big, but they go away with 3-5 point win, push it to a game 7. And, God knows what will happen in game 7. But I'll tell you what needs to happen if that's going to happen, if they're going to win. If it were me, and I'm not an NBA player, but it feels like they need to invite Dame to go out into the gym and shoot threes or something, or go have a Coke, whatever he wants, right? And then all the rest of them sit down and look at each other and say, we let that guy down. We weren't there. He did everything for us. We didn't do it. So we're going to come out in this game, and no matter what, he doesn't have to lead us. He can still blaze or he can fall. Doesn't matter. But no matter what, we're going to pick him up and we're going to win this one. And we're going to be there this game. And I think if they could manage that, they'll win. Because I still think, pound for pound, they've got a better team than Denver, especially if Dame and Jokic cancel each other out. Because Jamal Murray is out and Will Barton is out. Okay, I think pound for pound, Portland has a better team. But they better play like it, or else they're going to be going home.
Yeah, I mean, I just was looking right now, and there's a quote from the media availability tonight from CJ McCollum that says, me specifically, I have to be better for me and for Dame, and I will be. And so I think that there has to be a sense in which these guys are feeling that. They know, I mean, they can look at this and see what Dame did. It's not a surprise to them. It's not anything that they don't understand. So, yeah, I mean, I think they know, and it's just a matter of, okay, now what? Now what do we do? So hopefully this puts some fuel in their fire. I think for whatever reason, I've said it before, that this team tends to play to the level of their opponent. They can have a 1-point game with the worst team in the league, and then they can come out and beat the best team in the league on any given night. They tend to play to the level of their opponent. And I also think that they tend to, I'm going to call it procrastinate. They tend to procrastinate. They tend to put it off to the last minute. It's like, well, we won this one. This one's not as big of a deal. And then once they realize, oh, wait, now we have to win. There's no safety net anymore. They do. They come out and they do what they need to do. This is a team that has a tendency to do what they need to do. That's where they're comfortable. For whatever reason, they aren't comfortable just coming out and blowing things out of the water. They aren't just comfortable coming out, and it seems like their comfort level, and I'm not speaking to their actual comfort level because I'm not them, I don't know. But it seems to me that as a team, their comfort level is when their backs are against the wall and they've got to pull it out, they do. And so for that reason, I sound like I'm on Shark Tank. For that reason, I think that they're going to come out in the next 2 games and we're going to see them pull it together.
Yeah, they have to knock that off, though. They really do. And here, I was thinking as you said that, you sparked something here. You know why Damian Lillard is so good? Because every setback that he's had, he's fixed. And he hasn't waited to fix. The famous New Orleans series where Drew Holiday and company shut him down because he could not deal with the trap. He dealt with it. He figured out how to use screens. He backed his shooting range up to the moon. So if they're going to double team him, they got to double team him at 35 feet instead of at, 22. Okay, he fixed that. And it ain't gotten unfixed yet. Right? The only thing that stops Dame is the physical grind, I think, the physical wearing down. Other than that, he's honed his skill, and he does not take failure well. I think that his teammates are spotty in that. Look, it's perilous to pick on individual players because everybody has flaws. But CJ McCollum, forget his last shot. Look at his other shots and how his rhythm and his form was just a little bit off. And yeah, some of that's instinctive. But you know what's instinctive for Dame? Perfect form. You know why? Because he's done that 6 billion times in practice to where if he screws up, he screws up perfectly. Right? If he gets nervous, his brain shuts off and his body just does what his body does, which is near perfection. Okay? That's work. You see a lot of the other Blazers. I mean, Yusuf Nurkic too, when he's inside, pick on him a little bit. His footwork, his inside game, he has all the tools to do it. He could be as good as Enes Kanter at this, probably like that. But he still misses a lot of those inside shots. I mean, he has to be on to be on. Well, if you want to win in the playoffs, you have to be on when you're off. When it's in doubt, you got to hit. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's some of that that's just missing from the DNA of either this team or a lot of players in this team. Again, we've talked about self-satisfaction. Now, if we get to the off season and we're still talking about this kind of thing, it's time to take that seriously. And it's time to either hone those things or get players who will. Because we can't watch stuff like happened tonight around Lillard and say this is still okay.
Yeah, I mean, Dame's work ethic and his ability to be open to criticism. I mean, he's not someone where someone offers criticism and he's like, well, I'm a superstar, blah, 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 blah. I mean, nobody says it like that, but you know what I mean. He takes criticism. He listens to criticism. And not only does he take criticism and listen to it, he gets better because of it, which is basically what you're saying. Dame goes out and he looks at what didn't work and he fixes it. And if the rest of the Blazers could do that, it would be great. I hope that they do. I hope that we come out in Game 6 and after some reflection and some correction, we kick some butt.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll run down the list. Let's make this a reel. Let's light this podcast up. I mean, I think that the best players on this team, basically in order, are Lillard, McCollum, Nurkic, Powell, Covington, and then the bench is kind of mushed together. Okay, depends on the night. Okay, that's like in order of favoritism or best talent or whatever. I think it's pretty clearly that. As far as players, though, that you keep on this basis, obviously you would keep Lillard. I think he would keep Covington as well. I think he's shown it. Norman Powell has made a career out of working his way up and do that, so I trust him. Nurkic, on the fence. I will be real honest with you. On the fence about whether that's in his DNA. He talks it. He talks like it is, but it doesn't always show up. McCollum, I think, would need to go. Carmelo Anthony needs to go, and not because Carmelo's a bad player either, but because Carmelo Anthony is not in the stage of his career where this is a thing. He's Carmelo Anthony. He's that attraction. He's like Andre the Giant in his later WWF days where the career has already been proven and he's walking in once every WrestleMania to be an attraction. That's great for Carmelo, but that's not what the Blazers need. Enes Kanter, I don't know. I mean, I like Kanter's game, but I don't think he's improving either. Anthony Simons, I would keep. I think there's a large swath of this roster that you could move without second thoughts on this basis, not on a talent basis. And I think if the Blazers don't end up winning this series, they need to think about doing so.
I mean, you know what I'm going to say to that. I can't. I just can't. It's not within me to do that. I can't do it. I've tried to be, to look at it objectively, and I just can't. So I'm going to leave that to you, and I'm just not going to. I love being a Blazer fan is enjoyable to me. It's fun to me. And I, at least right now, at this point in the playoffs where nothing can be done, I just want to enjoy the guys we have while we have them, because the reality is probably this is not going to be the team we have next year.
Right. And we knew that. I'll make it even more fun by saying Derek Jones Jr. got to go. Nasir Little stay. I think that's the call there too. So already, based on what we've seen, almost no matter what happens, unless they go to the championship, I think I'm set for the summer based on what I'm seeing right now. We'll rediscuss this in the summer. But I think if nothing else, look, a lot is being revealed here. And it's a lot more than where CJ's foot hits the sideline. That's what's going to be the focus. That's what's going to be the memory. But that memory means nothing compared to this bigger stuff. So where else have we got to go? I mean, we kind of talked about Game 3 and Game 4, but Game 5 blew them out of the water. I mean, other than neither team showed up entirely in their respective losses, I don't think there's that much to say. I think, yay for fighting back, but one of the teams is going to take control. And right now, Denver has staked that claim first, so Portland better do it. Other than that, I don't have a ton of thoughts on games 3 and 4. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the one thing I will say is, Game 4 was a win for us, 115-95. I'm always happy to see the score below 100. I feel like that means that we played defense, at least to some degree. I mean, it also can mean that the other team is just really struggling. Those are good things to see. I agree. I think it's, and it's interesting when we do a podcast like this weekly, because we're only talking once a week. And by the time, especially with playoffs, by the time, this comes out, it will be Thursday. So it'll be right before the next game. Right. And by the time we record again, there will have been more games. But I think a lot of times, especially when we've had an exciting game like we just had tonight, and then we immediately record after, it's kind of hard to even get into the other games because this is really all we're thinking about. So
right. I can give you, I remember what I thought about Game 3, though. I do remember one thought that was clear. The scary thing about Game 3 is that the Blazers actually did it right. The Game 2 was not good. Okay, Game 2 was bad. But Game 3, the Blazers basically made some adjustments and played more or less the way they want to play. There were some execution errors a little bit, and there were some shots that were weird. But that's the only game in this series besides tonight. Now, it's happened again, but at that point, and through Game 4, really, that was the only game in the series where a team played like they wanted to play and still lost. And it was Portland. And that did not bode well. That happened. Actually, that did not happen tonight. I will say Game 3 is still the only, because the Blazers didn't want to play like they played tonight. Actually, what saved this game is simply Damian Lillard doing better than all but 7 players in NBA history have done. By the way, do you know those other names like that he's alongside now? Donovan Mitchell is the only contemporary. Okay, because Donovan Mitchell did it last year, and he had 57. Right. So this is not unheard of. Donovan Mitchell did it too, which harkens back now to the draft where we got Zach Collins. God bless Zach Collins. Hope he gets better soon. But I remember Damian Lillard making noise about drafting Donovan Mitchell at that point, and the Blazers didn't. If they had, theoretically, they would have 2 of the top 7 players in the NBA history of playoffs. But Jordan, you mentioned, right? Allen Iverson, obviously huge scorer, but Elgin Baylor and Rick Barry and Wilt Chamberlain are the other names that Dame now stands among. And that's a lot. I mean, there's not a name in there that you have not heard other than perhaps Donovan Mitchell. So, yeah, I mean, and granted, 3-pointers are part of it. I get it. And Denver's defense is not fantastic. At the same time, you're one of 7 players in NBA history to ever do this. Yeah. That's big.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I constantly say that we are so lucky to get to watch Dame suit up in a jersey for the team that we like time and time and time again. It's really, we're just really lucky. We're just really lucky to have him in Portland. And I mean, I don't want to speculate past that, but I hope that he has a long and successful career here.
Oh, yeah. Well, though, that this game is going to fuel the national fire, right?
I know.
You know what Stephen A. Smith is going to say tomorrow.
Yeah, if as bad as it feels tonight, it's about to get worse because we're about to have to hear, we're going to start seeing the memes show up with him in Laker jerseys, and we're going to, those just almost kill me. I don't even want to talk about this.
Yeah,
let's talk about fans.
Yeah, don't listen to NBA radio tomorrow, and do not listen to ESPN talking heads because they're going to say the same thing. Dame deserves better than this, and for one night, they're right. But this is another brick in that wall. That's kind of icky. But yeah, let's go. What else do we have?
The only other thing that I wanted to touch on, just because it's such a big thing right now, we talked about it a little bit last week, but the fan situation. What was the first incident was?
It was spitting on Trae Young, and then we had popcorn.
Yeah, and the Knicks situation with him, and then Melo we talked about last week. So then this week we've had Russell Westbrook leaves the court after an injury. A fan throws popcorn at him. he loses it, which he's in every right let's try that again. He's within every right to feel that way, having food thrown at him as he's injured and walking off the court.
Point of order. Hold on just a second. Is popcorn food? I mean,
in this case,
but is it really?
Yes.
No, I get it. Just hold on for Westbrook for a second. So here's the thing. Like when I'm alone, I don't really cook for myself because it's sad. So, and you have to do dishes. So I will sometimes eat something like a piece of bread or some popcorn, but I'm not entirely sure popcorn qualifies as food.
I've eaten popcorn for lunch before, so I'm probably not the one to ask.
Okay, so I guess it's food. Does. I mean, it's better than throwing a chili dog on him, I suppose. But yeah, okay. So popcorn is food, and it's tossed on. We'll get back in.
It's a moot point to me. I mean, to me, it has a lot more to do with the disrespect than it does the actual item of food. I know. I wasn't trying to link the two. But so that's the first thing. The fan ended up having their season tickets revoked, I believe, and was no longer allowed inside the stadium, which is fair. Then there was the whole Kyrie Irving situation where this actually has two parts to it. He stepped disrespectfully, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you who cannot see, on the logo of the Celtics, which happens to be a leprechaun with a name that we now all know because this has been I'm sorry, but I just can't. This is a side note to the fan thing. But like the fact that people are getting mad at Kyrie for stepping on the floor on a logo that they run over and over and over. And it's a logo. It's a cartoon leprechaun. Can we just chill on the disrespect issue here with stuff like this? Like, this is ridiculous. Let's not do this. Yeah, I mean, I wish that fans had the amount of respect for the players that they're demanding for a cartoon logo painted on a wood floor. That's all I'm saying. It's a little ridiculous. So Kyrie Irving steps disrespectfully, again, air quoting, on this logo. And when he leaves, a fan throws a water bottle at his head. Fan was removed. I believe they're actually facing charges for assault. I want to say something like that. They're pressing charges on the fan, I believe. So, and then the most recent one that I've seen was the fan charging the court. What game was that?
It was the Knicks game, I believe.
Yeah. Was it?
Hawks Knicks, anyway, I think so.
There was a fan that charged onto the court. Security tackled him, removed him, whatever. So all these incidents are happening. There may be some that I didn't even mention, where fans are just being irate. This is not normal. This is not normal behavior. It's not acceptable behavior. You know, I mean, I said last week when we talked about this, I think people have, in a sense, kind of forgotten how to act in public. It's just insane. It's insane to me that this is happening. You know, one of these days, somebody's going to snap and fight back, and we're going to have Malice at the Palace Part 2.
Yeah, I mean, so look, first of all, with the Kyrie thing, that's not my comment. Look, do whatever you want on the Trailblazers logo. You know, it doesn't, like you said, it's the floor. And even if I might get really upset about it, but my getting upset at an opposing player, I think, is within the realm of fandom. Actually expressing that by physically interjecting something into the game or physically approaching or attacking one of the people who play the game is out of line. There were wrestling promotions, you know, in the old carnival days that actually liked this kind of stuff. They were proud of getting the fans so mad because they were so invested. But that was a drama. That was a show. They literally made money from doing that. They wanted to bait you into doing it. Right. And unfortunately, I think that's part of our tradition of fandom, that kind of thing. And I think it still happens in combat sports and stuff like that. Those fans get a little bit rowdy. Okay. At the same time, there is a sense that in individual kind of promotion sports like that, where your money is depending on being promoted for a single event, that's more of a cooperative thing. That, you know, I don't think Dana White or whoever runs the MMA is that upset when fans throw something into the octagon, okay? Because he's seeing money and he's seeing them coming back. That's not at all true in any way for team sports, for something like the NBA. They don't want it. Players are not asking for it. players are not making any money or profit or anything from it. It's absolutely nothing but destructive. And it shouldn't be part of the culture. It shouldn't be part of our fan lexicon when it's not in any way consensual. It's that's just abusive. And we gather around the sport. And a lot of people miss this, right? We gather around something that's in between us and not us, something that's central. Nobody's going to gather around to see popcorn guy throw popcorn. That's literally not a sport. There's no national popcorn throwing league. We gather to see basketball, and anything that you do that impedes or harms that we gather around is harming all of us, including yourself, and especially the players that you depend on. And by the way, no one's gathering around to see your team scrimmage against nobody either. There needs to be an opponent, okay? Yep. So the more you do to harm the thing and the people in between us, the further this gets from the realm of not only acceptability, but rationality. And I think that at this point, we as fans need to recognize that and recognize that's an issue. And there needs to be a covenant and a compact among us, in addition to the legal, that as a society, we will not do things that harm all of us like that. That the whole premise of gathering and being together is to share this event together, and we'll do it in such a way that makes that possible. And people who can't do that cannot come.
Yeah, and just to simplify it, these players are people. So let's treat them with respect. Let's be respectful of people. I feel like that is a simple concept that is not being grasped. The people that are playing this sport are, and I say this over and over and over again, but clearly someone isn't listening to our podcast. The people who are playing the sport are people first. At the end of the day, they go home. They have families, they have feelings. And so to think in any way, shape, or form that it's acceptable to disrespect another human being by throwing food at them or a water bottle at their head or whatever it may be, anything, it's not okay under any circumstance. And it just makes me so angry to see people disrespecting other human beings that way.
Now, this is going to be interesting because I agree with you 100%, but people now are going to link that back to the Kyrie thing and say, well, sometimes symbols are worth more than people because we've been taught that, like, for instance, the flag, right? And, the armed forces and what have you. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that that's within our culture, our American culture, that you don't disrespect the symbol. At the same time, I would argue that even in those most extreme cases, if there's no flag, people are still people. And if someone has another flag, those are also still people. And when we forget that, we are perpetrating a crime on humanity that is unconscionable. We've been at war with other countries. Those wars are now over. Are those people still not people the way we tried to say they were back in World War I or World War II or whatever? I would argue that we've learned that they are people. And by the way, considering them people is what keeps us out of those terrible situations. It's not fair, I think, to reverse those big symbols down to your team and say, if you step on my team's logo, you're no longer a people, or you're disrespecting me, my humanity, so that I disrespect you. Here's the other thing. You know what? You can leave that arena. Technically speaking, no matter what your heart says, you can trade that Boston Celtics logo for a Milwaukee Bucks logo, or a Los Angeles Lakers logo, or a Trailblazers logo. That's voluntary. Being a person is not voluntary. Fandom is revocable. Being a person is not revocable. So one has to balance this stuff out and look and say, look, even if I feel disrespected, I'm not the center of the universe. My symbol isn't the center of the universe. You know what's the center of the universe? Us together. I will not do the things that violate the us together, no matter how I as an individual feel. And that's the only basis that we can gather together in the first place. Otherwise, it's chaos, mayhem, and bloodshed.
Well, and frankly, the fact is, you're entitled to feel however you want. If you as a Celtics fan or a person that doesn't like the Celtics feels disrespected because Kyrie stepped on the face of your logo, fine. You're entitled to that. You're entitled to feel disrespected. That's fine. What you're not entitled to do is lash out in your feeling of disrespect and disrespect another person by throwing an object at their head. You can feel however you want to feel, but that doesn't mean that you can lash out. And so, if you want to be pissed off at Kyrie Irving because he stepped on your logo's head, fine. But to take it to the extent of bodily harm or throwing something at, like, I just can't fathom how some people made it to adulthood. That's all I'm going to say. Like, how are you a functioning human in this society? And maybe that's the problem with our society.
I mean, sports contributes to this, though, doesn't it? I mean, honestly, a lot of what we encourage is an us versus them mentality. And there's been a lot of that. I mean, this is not so far from our door. I hope not because of the violence. But if you look at, like, public relations or what have you, even that sports teams put out, a lot of it ends up being, we are good and anything we do is good because we have done it, because it's us doing it. And check your brains at the door and think with your hearts and react the way we tell you to. Because your job is to support us no matter what. I find that a little, not just disingenuous, but dangerous. Because when you do that, then all of a sudden the whole rest of the world becomes them. You don't trust your own analysis, your own feeling, you just react. Now, I'm not saying that had anything to do with the actual water bottle throwing, but I'm saying, there but for the grace of some rationality, go we in this environment. And I think it's important. It's important to have some measurement over this stuff. It's important to be critical of things that are coming from different directions, including one's own fandom. And somewhere in there should be a check that says, okay, I am really pissed off, and I want to be free to be pissed off. But at the point that pissed off overwhelms me, that I have no control anymore, and I'm throwing things at people, at that point, my investment has gone too far and has bent into something that's abusive and unhealthy, and I need to back off. We're not really good at those boundaries and balances, and especially in a sports environment. I mean, again, think about how every call a ref makes is wrong because it's against our team. Some of them are clearly not. I mean, one could argue, and Denver will, that part of the reason that we got so far in this game was because the refs made an absolutely bogus-ass call against Michael Porter Jr. when Damian Lillard shot a three. There was no contact, and Lillard missed a three, but they didn't want to revoke that call when there was no contact, so instead they switched it to the contact happened before the shot. Let's give the Blazers a do-over. That wasn't accurate. That was a bad call.
I mean, technically, he did push on him.
No, really.
I'm just saying... Basketball's supposed to be a non-contact sport.
Okay, but then if we did that, then there would have been 1,000 calls, right?
I know.
But see what I mean? You can see our instincts. I'm not saying it's wrong.
That's the point.
But I presume that you would not then stomp off to the referee's hotel and start throwing vodka bottles at them or something like that.
No, right? Probably not.
Okay.
No.
Especially with you. Well, what else are you going to do with them?
Of course not. That's the line. The line is, I'm very rainbows and unicorns and whatever on this podcast. But the fact of the matter is, if you ever sit down and actually watch a game with me, I am yelling. I am angry. I am frustrated. I run the gamut of emotions. I am a very competitive person.
Okay, because we talked about like Buffalo Wild Wings, like if the Blazers won a championship, I'd drive down there. Yeah, I could see this now. If we ever actually watch a game together, like in a Buffalo Wild Wings, you're going to be the one screaming across the room, and I'm going to be the one tipping the waiter like 80% because of it.
First of all, the waiters at Buffalo Wild Wings love me. I'm very entertaining. Okay. But I have gotten into multiple full-blown verbal arguments with Laker fans at Buffalo Wild Wings. I've gone and been with friends at Buffalo Wild Wings where they can see it coming and they're like trying to hold me back because they know what's coming, and I fight it and then I just can't take it anymore. I am someone who is vocal about what I think. I get into it with people. This is a side that, most people don't see. The only way you're ever seeing this is if you actually sit and watch a game with me. That being said, at the end of the game, I'm going to smile. I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to I'm not being a jerk to these people. I'm getting into a discussion about sports, a lively discussion about sports. There's a difference in feeling the way you feel. There's a difference in debating. There's even a difference in some not so mean-spirited trash talk and throwing objects at players. There's a difference. And so I just want to say, like, I'm not someone who sits at home hugging my stuffed unicorn while I watch the Trailblazers and singing, melodies in my mind.
I hold a cat on my lap.
I mean, you're probably more calm than I am in these situations. I'm a mess. I am a mess to watch games with. You can ask anyone who's ever done it. But there are still boundaries. And I know that about myself. And there are times where I have to physically walk away because I know that if I don't, I'm going to cross a line. And I think that as human beings, as adults, as people who should be responsible, we need to know our limits. We need to know our boundaries. And when we start to get heated, we need to remind ourselves that this is sports. It's for fun. It's for entertainment. If you are at this point with your competitiveness or your, fandom, you need to take a breath, walk away, and not do something rash that you're going to regret later and it's going to hurt someone.
Well, the other one that I heard about was Ja Morant's parents got harassed terribly in Utah. I can't understand that. I mean, who's so inhuman that it's their kid, and you're trashing them because they came to watch their kid?
Well, and the fact is, one of the things, did you see the interview with, or the quote that was circulating from Venus Williams this week? She was talking about media and how the way she's handled media over the years is she knows that no matter how direct or rude or whatever the question is, at the end of the day, they don't hold a candle to her ability. And so no matter what they ask or what they say, at the end of the day, when she goes home, she knows she's millions of times better than these people who are asking the questions, and they could never do what she's done. And I think about that sometimes, these people that are trash talking in the stands is like the guy that is sitting on the very farthest end of the bench who's never seen NBA minutes or has seen very few NBA minutes could school your butt in basketball any given day. Anyone in these stands. Otherwise, you'd be down there. So you get these people that are trash talking, and it's like, I don't know. I'm going off on some whole other tangent that we don't need to go off on tonight. But just be kind, people. Be kind.
Or if you can't be kind, at least be quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, yell appropriately, but dang. Yeah, so Buffalo Wild Wings, those Laker fans have those janky lemon pepper wings, I bet, huh?
I don't know, but I think the servers there like when I come because I bring the entertainment.
Nice. So what do you get when you're there? I forget.
I do wings, but I do boneless wings because I don't like being messy.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I get Parmesan garlic, boneless wings.
That's a little bit Sacramento Kings-ish, I got to tell you, but okay. And that's the ones you like?
It's a little what?
Sacramento Kings like.
Why?
Just because it's like kind of just there. But okay. Parmesan garlic.
I can't do spicy.
Yeah.
I can't do spicy. Even the Parmesan garlic are a little spicy for me. Like I need to also drink lots of water.
Parmesan garlic is spicy. What's
wrong
with your spice
there's
meter?
A little kick. There's a little kick to it.
It's the Parmesan.
Anyway.
Those little grains have a little kick. They get in between my taste buds.
You know what, Dave? And then, but the best thing, my favorite thing to get at Buffalo Wild Wings, and sometimes I actually get this for takeout all the time and just eat it by myself for no reason at all. It's an appetizer, and they're everything pretzel knots. So they're pretzel knots with like the everything seasoning on them. If you've ever heard of that, it's amazing. And they have beer cheese, which is the best. And you dip them in the beer cheese. And they also come with honey mustard, which is gross. So I substitute that for beer cheese. I've got my 2 beer cheese dips and my pretzels, and I love it. There is nothing. It's legitimately my favorite.
Beer cheesing.
Don't what?
Double-fisted beer cheesing. I love it.
I mean, it's the best. It's the best. It's amazing, and that is my primary reason for going to Buffalo Wild Wings is those dang pretzel knots.
Well, I tell you, folks, I have seen Dia literally come out of her chair a few times in doing this podcast over the months. So I bet that they like move the chandeliers and stuff like that when she should. They give her a booth with a high ceiling. They don't have
chandeliers at Buffalo Wild Wings.
High ceiling and a lot of padding. All right. Well, in any case, for better or worse, when we talk again, we're going to know what happened. I mean, there are 2 games left in this series, and hopefully we will be talking about the Blazers going onward. We will know. I think, okay, let's presume that they're going to win Thursday night. What happens in Game 7? Do you see them winning it?
They win. Yeah, I say, but the Blazers are taking this. They're going to win. They're going to win this series. Actually, both of those will be over the next time we talk. So it's on Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And Phoenix, by the way, cleaned the Lakers' clock tonight. So Phoenix is now ahead 3-2. So there's a possibility that the Suns might await the winner, which could open up. Now, Phoenix would be a tough matchup, but better than the Lakers. I think we've discussed this.
I would much rather face, even if it's just, I would rather lose to the Suns than lose to the Lakers, even if that's all it is.
It would maybe open up another 2019 possibility where the Blazers get a run to the Western Conference Finals. And guess what? No Warriors there this time. Now, don't underestimate the Jazz or Clippers or anybody else. Although Blazers, Mavericks, I'd take that. Yeah, I mean, there's still possibilities. This series is not over. So let's hope that we are talking about a matchup with the Suns when we come together next Tuesday. And that would be glorious. And that's what we're hoping for. We know all of you are too. Until then, we will be rooting right alongside us. Find us at Twitter at Dave Deckard or at Deandra Ann. Put in lots of A's and N's like banana and you'll find it. Also, of course, you can find us at Blazers Edge. For Dia Miller, I'm Dave Deckard. We will see you next time.
A hater sees an opening down the lane, moves towards the hoop, but then Dia comes out of nowhere to swat the shot attempt away, saying, "Get that weak stuff out of here." Dave scoops up the loose ball. Now it's a fast break the other way with Dia. She's flying down the court. Dave sends her an alley-oop. She jams it. Boom, shakalaka. The crowd is on its feet saluting Dia. I tell you, if she isn't the Rookie of the Year, they really ought to just stop giving the award. What a talent.